Here is Dr. Richard Bartlett and Melissa Joy Jonsson.
Hi there, that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Joy and welcome to this informational webinar about the upcoming Best of the Best seminars. Transformation is the name of the game. Obviously, Richard looks a little different today. Richard, would you like to talk about your recent transformation?
Well, here's the thing, it's very interesting. The picture that's promoting this webinar looks less like I look now than this does. So this is actually less scary than the way I look now and more accurate. So I thought I'd just start out letting you know so I don't scare anybody. Plus, it's Halloween here, and I was in Walmart and I saw this and I said, I've got to do it. You know, I couldn't find my Batman cowl, which is I've worn before in a webinar, and I haven't seen Melissa in a while because she's been out of the country. And I just thought Matrix Energetics is all about fun. It really is, and it's about imagination. It's about joy. It's about going past all your perceived limitations and discovering a whole new territory. Actually, discovering things you would never even consider. So. Well, for me, this is normal, but maybe for some of you, this would push the boundaries a little bit.
And really, all of the boundaries that we've set up in our individual and shared realities are artificial. They're constructs that reality conforms to, like rule sets. And Matrix Energetics is all about creating new rule sets that let you tap into your own unbounded potential. And we do that really through the art and the heart of play. And so, you know, Richard dressing up as himself it's part of the equation. I do want to let you know that on the right hand corner of your control panel on your computer screen, there's an icon called questions about 3/4 of the way down, and you can type your questions, and some of you have already typed comments in there. During the webinar, we'll do our best to answer them as they occur, or else you may find that we don't answer them immediately, but we somehow invariably answer them throughout the course of the webinar. We were talking before this webinar we did some extensive planning, and we were trying to figure out exactly how, and I'm laughing because every time we get together on stage, there is no plan, and we spontaneously allow what moves through us to flow in perfect synchrony. And so we were talking about our plan of no plan and how to best transmit to all of you the opportunity that's available with the upcoming Best of the Best seminars. And we want to give you a little bit of not really a taste, but access points into what you might expect from the seminar. But the truth is, we don't really even know, which is part of what makes the seminar so exciting, because every time we get together and teach as a cohesive team, we don't really know what's going to happen in the next moment. And we're as surprised and amazed and delighted as all of you. And so some of what the expectation is with a Matrix Energetic seminar is to let go of expectations. When you let go of expectations, that's really opening you into the realm where anything becomes possible. Our expectations are limitations, and when you have no expectations, that's the domain of miracles.
What's beautiful about that is the absolute freedom of allowing whatever shows up to then take center stage and take your awareness to someplace that you wouldn't consciously necessarily go. And this field is very much it's a trickster shamanic sort of energy, quantum shamanism, if you want to call it that, and it truly can surprise both the individual and the group. And what's really magical is when we come together in a group, there is this shared excitement, and there's this shared joy, this joy for no reason that occurs. And I've seen it, Melissa and I both have seen it take people to places in their awareness that afterwards they were never the same again, and in a good way, of course. This is a little different. I mean, this was a little disturbing, but I mean.
Yeah, do you think the real Richard Bartlett can maybe show himself a little bit, release that layer? Gandalf?
Yeah, see, I look so much like the picture, right?
Well, I mean, a picture is just a snapshot in time, and it's really never capturing our true essence. And that's kind of what we also learn in matrix energetics, is that these moments in time in our experiences are encoded holographically in our fields, and often we get stuck replaying those moments in time, and then we wonder why we can't transform our experience. And what the field of ME brings forth for all of us is the ability to move past that still screenshot, if you will, to the true nature of reality, which is really fluid. It's like a moving movie. And if you want to change what's happening in your life, then you've got to change the scenes that are playing out or that are frozen in time across your holographic movie screen. It's really interesting in that we've been teaching together for almost 12 years, and one of the things that we see consistently, no matter where we're teaching, if it's America or Europe or Japan, is that the less people seem to know, the better they are at doing matrix energetics. And sometimes we encounter new students who are intimidated by the physics that we provide as a backdrop for the mind to know that this isn't woo-woo, there's actually something going on. And we find that people with less experience, with less training, whether it's medical training, engineering training, school teacher training, the less you know, it seems the more that you can access. At the same time, whatever it is that you do already know can be supercharged and synergized by the teachings that are available in matrix energetics. And so really this field will meet anyone at all walks of life and will say, I want to take you deeper and further into your experience of consciousness, your experience of reality, and transcend the artificial boundaries that you've set up that are keeping you shackled to perceived limitation. And that happens really easily through the art of play.
It happens in such a way that it's not really something, I mean, it's never out of your control, and yet we've seen so many ridiculous and amazing things over the years that literally almost anything goes. It's hard for me. I can still be, I suppose, surprised, but it's difficult for me to be surprised by what's happening on stage or happening with an individual or even happening with a group of individuals, because it becomes, again, a unifying expression of this holographic dream state theater that the whole group can shift and transform each other. And it's like taking something that appeared separate before and bringing it together in such a way that there's a new coherence and a new realization that becomes possible in that group dynamic that might not have occurred outside of it.
And my sense is, and perhaps our sense is, although I never would want to speak for Richard, is that it's not so much that multiple people are required for transformation to occur. No, one in connection with the field is the majority. However, when there is a group dynamic, it's like being in an amphitheater with surround sound, where you're surrounded in the circumference of consciousness with various possibilities. And so transformation becomes progressively easier. It's kind of like, if you're trying to change yourself, it's like hitting your head against the wall, and that's all you can notice is the wall that's in front of you. And then suddenly you've got this entire room of people experiencing joy and experiencing playfulness and experiencing fluidity. And then you notice, well, there's not really a wall in front of you. In fact, there's wide open space that's voluminous with potential. So the group effect also makes it easier for us to loosen up, because we tend to take our problems and our conditions and our diseases so seriously. And I think part of the reason this field is so playful and kind of like a trickster, coyote shaman, if you will, is because it invites us to loosen up and to lighten up and to not take ourselves so seriously, because that seriousness is like gravity. It weighs down on us, versus the playfulness is like levity. And literally, this is why we think we see people levitating off the stage and moving in such crazy ways, because there is a physics expressing the essence of consciousness through transformation.
That shared experience in that physics, it taps into something that's already been established as a very unique morphic field. And this is why, one of the reasons why it's so powerful, even for the individual, not just in a group setting, but everyone that's ever stepped into that field has created a certain resonance with that shared gift, and that gift then gets more powerful, more expressive, more joyful, and expands over time. And it even does things. It's kind of like artificial intelligence that at some point reaches a point where it becomes super luminal, and all of a sudden it expands into dimensions it was never even programmed for. And that's happened with matrix energetics. It kind of got whatever my box was for it when it first came, it's escaped that box, and it's surprised me all these years. I'm still stunned by the power, the majesty, the grace, and the tremendous playfulness of that field when it's expressing in it's hard to even describe the possibilities, intricate ways that can be so surprising and yet so profound that it's like, well, it's certainly not human, but it transcends the limits of your matrix for what being, quote, human, or being, quote, spiritual, or any of these things might mean to you. And it allows you the freedom to actually flow into something that actually is beyond the limitations of speech. It's very difficult in some ways to talk about it.
And yet talk about it we must, because if we offered a seminar for 4 days or 3 days and didn't say a word, people would still transform, but they wouldn't have a language to describe the experience. And one of the hardest things about teaching matrix energetics, to be honest, is articulating what may or may not be happening in any given moment. And it's not so much that it's hard to describe our understanding of it, but the description of our understanding of it places an artificial boundary or limitation on what can be noticed, tracked, and experienced. Anytime you describe something, it creates a framework, and that description becomes an inherent limitation. And so when we teach, we do our best to provide a language as straightforward as possible, because it's not linear, but to describe a language to share what may be happening. At the same time, we will always tell you that what we say is happening may not be exactly what's happening. It's like science. Science are maps to describe tendencies of consciousness or of reality, but science isn't really what's really happening. It's just a description of what's happening. And we'll teach you what we call a modality, and then we'll tell you it's not a modality. But we've got to call it something. A modality is simply a mode of being, a mode of operating, an operating system. So we'll tell you and teach you different ways of interacting with information. And yet matrix energetics is much more than what we appear to be doing. The doing is almost like a distraction that gets our conscious mind out of the way so that infinite possibilities beyond the parameters of the conscious mind can become available. So it's very paradoxical, and the harder you try to understand it, the harder it is to grasp.
However, it's interesting because even trying to understand it has its own set of parameters, almost like realities in a bracket. And it is possible, certainly Melissa and I can do this, to slip in and out of someone's bracket, or even a group's bracket. And once you set in there, Richard Bartlett once described his job. He said he was hired to take people out of the asylums who had been committed voluntarily, and then kind of lost track of, well, reality, at least the way you would express it out here, so to speak. And so he would go in there, and the way he would get people out is he would be crazier than whatever their crazy reality was. And then they'd look at that and go, oh, maybe plan B over here. And so one of the things that Melissa and I are so good at without even trying is that slipping in and out of the cracks in people's awareness spaces in such a way that the definitions of how things are defined, again, using language is very difficult, although we're both very good at that. It slips and slides its way into places in little cracks and crannies that you might not normally be accessing. You might not even know you have access to it. It's like a mass trance state, but yet there's no hypnosis involved other than the idea that what's happening in front of you that you're perceiving is really what's happening in front of you that you're perceiving.
And in truth, everybody's individual and our shared experience of reality is already a mass trance state. We've been hypnotized into believing that what we're perceiving is real, whereas what we're perceiving is actually really deceiving. It's not any more real or unreal than the untapped possibilities that have yet to actualize. So one of the things that we learn very simply in matrix energetics is how to shift into different subsets of reality. And whatever experience you're having right now is simply a subset of the totality of reality and possibility. And you've encoded your consciousness through habituation into thinking that it's real, into thinking it's the only option. We describe it using a quantum physics term, collapse of the wave function. Out of all the infinite possibilities that are available, a smear of undifferentiated consciousness potential, you habituate your consciousness over and over again to perceive a state that creates an experience of no change. And we teach you through the art of play how to reverse that wave, to uncollapse the wave function from a state of no change to a state of infinite potential, so then you can choose anew. And all of this ultimately happens through what we call the 2-point, through time travel, through parallel universes, through archetypes or hallucinating out of our friggin' skull, as we call it, through the 21 frequencies, through what we refer to as the best of ME. And so it's reassuring to know that there's a science, perhaps, to explain what we witness consistently in matrix energetics, but it's even more reassuring to know that the individual is empowered to shift up the experience of reality simply by changing the lens of perception. And it's more than positive thinking. It's not like clicking your heels together 3 times and going, I want to change, I want to change, I want to change, and I'm going to put a notice on my refrigerator every day to remind me of what I want and to consistently reinforce what I don't have. It's not like that. It's actually leveraging the physics that the universe uses to create everything so that you can uncreate your habituated state and then recreate into a state that's different. And so
notes on my refrigerator scare me. I actually hide in the refrigerator to escape the notes on my refrigerator. I like to get in a box to get out of my box.
You might as well write a note to say, this is what you don't have and best of luck, because it's going to be a moving target. But it's a different way of manifesting, in that you don't necessarily need to use time in a linear manner, because everything's happening simultaneously through the eternal now. It's just learning how to expand your awareness to access different possibilities. And you can do that through the 2-point. You can do that through time travel. You can do that through parallel universes. We'll teach it to you like learning how to ride a bike. You know, when you first learn to balance on a bike, you usually have training wheels. You don't just get up on a 2-wheel bike and cruise away. You have something there to balance you and support you until balance in relation to gravity becomes second nature. Then you let go of the training wheels and you're free to ride forward, you're free to ride backwards, you're even free to ride with your head on your seat and pedaling with your hands. That's kind of where matrix energetics can take you once you learn the fundamentals and the basics as tools. Then you kind of embody the tools and it becomes second nature.
The trick about any tool is to think that what you're doing is something that's real and that it has only this effect when you do it in exactly this way, which is why we've always called it a consciousness technology, not a technique, because we have people all over the world that have, quote, learned what they think is a 2-point, but they've missed the point entirely, because what's in between these 2 points is infinite possibilities of awareness that do not encode for your conscious expectations and cannot be controlled by trying to make things happen by controlling reality and trying to get what you want. And so it's really about, and we've talked about this a lot, it's about letting go of your expectation subset, because it's usually so tiny, and then getting in between those 2 points, what George Lucas called the space between the spaces. And in that realm, there's things you can't even imagine, things you've never considered are possible, because those limitations completely disappear when your perceptual biases then become expanded or even distorted when we start playing with hallucinating out of your skull in such a way that you have access to things that are always there, always present. But when you let go of the idea they have to occur in a certain way, what then happens is, without effort, without any activity, in fact, those things come to you because they are always a part of you, and there is no separation in any of this.
And in essence, if we were to go perhaps to the heart of, say, the 2-point, which matrix energetics is most notorious for, the 2-point, I mean, you'll hear us say in a live seminar, there's no point to the 2-point, and then everybody's like, well, why am I here? I came here to learn the 2-point. Well, the 2-point is a construct that enables you to move from expression to potential, to move from distinction to unification, to move from separation to the oneness that is consciousness potential before it expresses through absolutely everything. And so people tend to think, when they first encounter the 2-point, that it's about the points. I'm reminded, and Richard knows what I'm about to say, I'm reminded of someone in Europe who came to one of our seminars and then decided the 2-point, because they saw us do the 2-point on the shoulder and the hip, decided the 2-point was about touching the shoulder and touching the hip. And then they decided to start teaching a 2-point called the shoulder and the hip. And it has nothing to do with the shoulder and the hip. It's the consciousness behind the modality of the 2-point that really is what enables transformation to happen. But what the 2-point lets you to do is to move from particle-based reality, where everything appears separate and rigid and fully formed as a distinct expression, into the possible true nature of reality, because we never really know, but the possible true nature of reality, which is a series of interconnected wave-based possibilities. And so the 2-point moves us from fixed, rigid, consistent, habituated states called trances into the fluidity of the wave-based possibilities from which all things express. And so it's a beautiful, simple, elegant construct for creating change, because it maps you to the level of consciousness where change occurs. Like, change doesn't happen by hitting your head up against the wall. That's the physics of a particle going against a particle. That's the physics of force. Change happens through the physics of finesse, or grace, if you will, where everything is fluidly moving in synergy, even if it looks like chaos. And so when you learn the 2-point, you learn so much more than how to choose 2 points on a physical body. What you're learning to do is to connect to your core essence and the core essence of the totality of consciousness, and that taps you into what physicists might call the 0-point field. That taps you into infinite consciousness potential from which all things emerge and all things return. So you tap into your true power source, if you will, without needing to be powerful over anything.
And that really is the distinction, because the idea, and we've talked about this, Melissa and I have talked about this many years, it's the distinction between being the doer and then standing back and allowing the door to open. And then that door itself, you could say the gateway is through the heart, not the physical heart, not the heart chakra, but through the essence of the being, which appears to be heart-centered, and to quote, people always talk about getting out of their left brain and whatever, and honestly, they're so far away from being embodied within the essence of self that they think that they're somehow not this thing, that they don't have access to this thing that they see, that they want, that they think is outside of themselves. And all they have to do is relax, and it's very easy to do, particularly in the magical setting that happens in a seminar, is to relax and allow themselves to drop down. And in fact, this is one of the key principles in matrix energetics: drop down, place intent, and let go. Nothing happens if you don't let go of your expectations about how you think things should happen. The universe flows, and you can learn to set back, watch it flow, and without trying to influence the outcome, the more relaxed you become, the more quiescent the state, the greater the immersion into the universe of all potential.
And it can sound so dramatic and yet or profound, and yet there's a simplicity. There's really a simplicity to it. We tend to complicate our lives and complicate our patterns and complicate our situations and circumstances. And I'm not lightening up the gravity of the challenges that we experience. However, when we perceive things very, very seriously, that creates a holographic projection of rigidity that doesn't necessarily allow for that fluidity and that grace to become available. One of the questions that came across the question board a little bit earlier is, would you call the domain of ME as the superconscious mind or the subconscious rising? And what I would say is, the morphic field of ME doesn't really care what we call it. I wouldn't necessarily label it a subconscious rising or a domain of the superconscious mind, because it isn't a field that is about the mind per se. It's a specialized morphic field, or an open container, if you will, that when you plug into it, it's conditioned for transformation. It's conditioned for miracles. There's a habituation to the field itself that allows for our rigid patterns to begin to change. So it doesn't matter what we're thinking or what it's thinking, because it's not personal. It's simply, if we go to the mathematics of the hologram, it's simply a series of binary codes that reprogram the patterns that we're running in our personal perspective reality, because it's like math. And so it changes up the mathematical equations, it changes up the brackets, and then transformation naturally unfolds. And you don't have to understand any of the math or the physics or really anything that we say, which is quite interesting. Sometimes we have students come to seminars and they're like, didn't understand anything that you guys taught, but I learned so much and I changed so much when I stopped trying to grok what it was that you were saying, and I just allowed myself to play. And so understanding isn't necessary in order to experience ME. And I often say experience will lead you to understanding. Experience will teach you your own personal relationship with this specialized field of information.
And what's really, again, amazing to me, and what I love about what Melissa and I do together, is I don't have an understanding of what this is, because every time I thought I understood something, the limitations that I'd placed around that understanding have dissolved, and those boundaries have sort of shifted, and the whole, like the goal and the target has moved in such a way that it continually transforms. And the beauty of this is it's like putting, we talk about this, it's putting the pebble into the pond, called the pond universal consciousness, whatever that might be. But that single little intent of letting go and putting that little pebble into the pond, those ripples continue infinitely. They dovetail back on each other. They create layers and textures, and each one of those interference patterns, as they occur, create the possibility. It's like a 2 point. Wherever these things meet, where two or more gathered together, there I am, that consciousness in the midst of them. Where those things cross, they create, again, new bridges into different possibilities. And this is ongoing. It's not just a seminar experience, but for people, it's an ongoing transformation that literally never stops.
Yeah, and another question that came up is how do you learn this from our books? And while there are 3 books about matrix energetics, the physics of miracles, and Enjoy Practically Speaking, those 3 books talk about the experience, and there are examples of doing the 2-point and doing time travel. You really can't learn this as effectively from a book as you can from the live experiential seminar. And Richard can really speak to that more fluently than I can because of the way that he modeled the seminars kind of after the Grateful Dead. But there's so much more to be accessed in the seminar versus what's in the books, although the books encode for the seminars. But you can't quite get it in the same way from a book than you can from a seminar. And that's why we continue to teach the seminars. I mean, matrix energetics honestly hasn't been taught since November and December of last year. And it's been put on deliberate hiatus. And then the message was, it's time to teach another round of seminars. And so we've agreed to offer the best of matrix energetics in Italy in mid-November, November 14th through November 17th, in Kirchzarten, southern Germany, the following weekend. And then we will also be teaching in the United States one time only in Seattle, December, I think it's the 7th through the 9th, and we'll give the exact dates at the end of this webinar. But it really is potentially a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, because honestly, we do not know when we will be teaching the live seminars again, and that is consistent with us staying in integrity with, we don't know what's going to happen. And we follow our own internal guidance, and we're just delighted that internal guidance has said, go ahead and do this tour. And we're looking forward to it. But I would say, if you're contemplating reading the books versus going to a live seminar, hands down, go to the live seminar if you can. I know it's not accessible for everyone. And that's why the books are available, and that's why there's online webinars that you can dabble in, but nothing replaces the live experiential seminar. And just like Richard would say, nothing replaces a live Grateful Dead concert.
Yeah, it's very different. I've been to Grateful Dead concerts live. Melissa and I have been, and believe me, I mean, it doesn't matter how much you live. It's like reading about sex versus having sex. I mean, it really is that different. Now,
I don't know if I would use that metaphor, but since you did.
Hey, it works for me. I mean, literally, I mean, you can read a description about something that transcends the limits of your ability to describe it, and still, even having the experience, try to grasp at it after the fact, it tends to slip away. But the beauty of it is, it's still there. It's still there and accessible, and it never goes away. There's nothing you lose. There was never anything to gain. The possibility was always inherent within you, within your experience. If you're even desirous of trying to understand this, or to read a book, or to have that, it's already there with you. It's already connected with you. So in a sense, you could get it from reading the book, because everything's there in those books. It's all there. The complete connection with that field is 100% there. And what stops people from actually experiencing that is they're not childlike enough to actually believe that they could have that experience, that experience could be a part of their reality. And that's something, because me particularly, I'll speak for myself, I'm a big kid and never grew up. The way the experience unfolds in a live setting is very much like a Grateful Dead concert. Jerry never played things the same. Fish also modeled that afterwards, but I literally set out to do it that way from the very beginning. I get bored easily. I went to medical school twice because somehow I thought once wasn't good enough. And so that curiosity and that desire and that playfulness is something that drove this into expression and continually itself, like again, like artificial intelligence, it is in the driver's seat. We are not. I mean, we can we can take you on a journey and we can show you the sights and you can get out and even, see the animals that are gathering, the dolphins and so on. But it is that immersion into the experience that then provides that deep understanding that is not at a conscious level, not subconscious either, though. It's a heart connection that transcends the limits of the language that you would use to attempt to describe it, experience it, control it, or capture it.
And one of the things, and I love books. I mean, to me, books open you up to new universes and new worlds. And one of the tendencies that occur when people just read the books as an opening into this field is that they take the information literally, like literally. And so there's a perception that the 2 point is literal and that it's about choosing 2 points and then looking for what's different. And then they write in and they say, well, I don't understand. I picked 2 points and nothing seemed to change. What did I do wrong? The answer is you didn't do anything wrong. But the consciousness behind the choosing of the 2 points is what you're not noticing. You're placing too much focus and emphasis on the 2 points. And really, if all we taught was the 2 point, we'd still have massive transformations. I mean, the 2 point connects you into that which is pointless, from which all things are connected. And so it's your gateway into infinite possibilities. But we expand upon the 2 point with what we call the best of the best, the other aspects of matrix energetics, because it gives you additional ways to be in a fluid conversation with the universe. You could really think about everything that we teach as being in a conversation with consciousness. And the more vocabulary you have, the more freedom and flexibility you have to uniquely express your unique essence. And that's one of my favorite things about matrix energetics, is that we don't teach you to be a bunch of automatons doing what we appear to be doing, because, well, we don't want you to be us. We have a hard enough time being ourselves, but nobody can be you better than you. And so what matrix energetics really, really does wonders with is teaching you how to be kind of the best version of yourself, the most liberated aspect of yourself, the most unbounded potential expressing through your unique individuality. And so we'll give you pointers and we'll show you different ways to leverage the 2 point, to leverage time travel, to leverage parallel universes, to leverage hallucinating out of your skull. And then how you synthesize that will be how you develop your own style. And then Emmy will move through you in a very, very unique way. This is why we have students that come back for hundreds of seminars, and that sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not.
Wow.
And we tease them. We say, did you not get it? Are you a slow learner? And it's like, no, I got it, and I want to get it more. And so there's tremendous value in repeating a seminar, but it's not ever a repeat, because we never teach the same 2 seminars ever.
We don't even know how to teach the seminar before we get on stage to teach the seminar. She always would, I don't know if she still would, but she used to always tell me, I don't have anything to say. And I'm like, oh God, she's going to be unstoppable tonight. Because when she says that, look out, it's about to explode all over the place and take people into realms they haven't even considered. And for me, I'm getting more and more comfortable with not knowing anything. I don't hear my thoughts very often anymore, except when I'm trying to not hear my thoughts. And so what comes out of my mouth or comes out in expression is a natural unfolding that's unique for both of us, the way it weaves together for us. That's never happened before and will never happen again in that same way. And what that does is it creates an intricacy of expression that taps into everything that's gone before. Literally, like our friend William, I think he told me he's been to some 500 seminars. He figured it out one day. and he said he's been to over 500 seminars, and that's quite amazing. And yet, I'll tell you something that's just fun where that can take you. Not that you have to go to 500 seminars, but he got it at such a level that he dissolved his expression of himself as separate from that field of experience to such a degree that when he steps into that, and that's something I've emulated, when he steps into that, he dissolves his expression of having a separate self, at least for a brief moment. It dissolves, and in that dissolving, that's where the resolving of patterns occur. That's where miracles can manifest. Miracles manifest quite naturally and easily. It's a grace of opening a door and relinquishing the doer. But that is always the case, and it is always there. What's really cool and unique about matrix energetics is it is reproducible and repeatable over and over again. It's entirely reliable to the point of you could literally take it and you could run experiments on it, and it would reproduce certain types of phenomena, which seem to be just playful additives that I don't know what they mean, but I mean, you know, when you start seeing the carpet rolling like an ocean, and then there's fins moving through the carpet, not sharks, dolphins, and you start to see the walls breathing, or people just joyous, they'll break out into laughter, or they're seeing all sorts of things flying around them. All these things are just elements of that dream theater expressing itself in unique ways that unfold for the individual, that are very much a part of that journey of inner exploration. That's kind of our hallucinating out of your skull section of the seminar, which really is the whole seminar, but we do have a section where we actually call it that.
And really what that section lets you do is to slide into resonance with a truer projection of reality, because we've conditioned our consciousness, and we'll map the science for you in the seminar. We've conditioned our consciousness to perceiving everything as being, well, we call it particle based, but as being rigid. And what we perceive is just an angle of awareness, a perspective in the hologram. But what we're really perceiving is the exchange of information along what's called wave-based interference patterns, or scalar technology. Everything is information exchange. Matrix energetics is all about connection to information. When you connect to information, there's resonance. When there's resonance and connection, there's an expression of energy. So we're not learning how to run energy here. This is not even energy work. This is informational grids of consciousness that we connect to. You change access to the information, you change the experience. And so when we're hallucinating out of our skull, or seeing archetypes, if we will, what we're doing is retraining the way that we perceive the hologram to recognize everything as patterns of information, as potential. We're surrounded by patterns continuously, but we don't notice those patterns because we just think that's a door, that's a window, that's a teacup. But what we're really looking at is a series of wave-based interference patterns exchanging information. And you learn to perceive that through playful archetypes, through symbolic representation of pattern information. And how is this useful, you may be asking? How is it useful to see the carpet moving? That sounds pretty crazy, and I wish Richard would just put his mask on again. And the fact is, it's incredibly useful. Don't, Richard. It's incredibly useful because in one subset of reality there may be a cancer, and when you learn to move into a different subset of reality where what appeared rigid is now suddenly fluid, well, now you're in a subset of reality where no cancer exists, where you might be locked into a subset of reality called pain. Whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, pain is pain is pain. Pain is awareness, pain is resonance. Well, that's one subset of reality. When you learn to fluidly move into the moving carpet, if you will, well, now you've accessed a different subset of reality where different possibilities become available. And someone asked earlier, how do we use this in everyday life? And it really is about embodying the consciousness So then when you go to apply the modalities aren't separate from you, they're an extension of you. And then it doesn't matter what you do, anything you do will enable you to access transformation. This is why we can be on stage and Richard tends to be more ridiculous than I do. I wait till like day 2 to be ridiculous, but he will sneeze to and somebody will change, and he's using that as a demonstration that it's less about what you actually do and more about the consciousness behind the expression that allows for transformation to occur. And that's so liberating, because that means A, it's not about you, and B, doesn't really matter what you do, it matters the consciousness you embody. And so embodying this field conditions your reality for transformation.
Well, that's the coyote shamanism aspect. And yeah, I will do ridiculous things, but what's really interesting for me is when I do ridiculous things, I'm not doing them. They are coming through as an expression of that field, how it shows up in that moment. And I could choose not to do those things, like to go blah, 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 or something, whatever occurs. But and this is true for everyone else. What starts to happen is the boundaries, the concrete expectations of how things are supposed to be start to get separated out of it and get more fluid. And anything you quote do or not do is really just a distraction in a way for what's happening below the surface of your normal lens of perception. And the more ridiculous or surprising something might be, the more likely a miracle might occur. Because I can tell you, I've seen some, and Melissa has too, we've seen some amazing miracles, but I can tell you that when those things occurred, by and large, it wasn't because we were trying to make something happen or even feeling like we had the ability for something to happen. It's when we stepped outside of the idea that we were limited, working against this limited condition in this expression with these sets of rules. That's when things can literally change in the twinkling of an eye.
And the other thing that we hear pretty consistently, and many people who are on this webinar who've been to seminars can attest to, is that you may choose to come to a seminar and changes happen in areas of your life that you weren't even focused on. Like, you thought you were coming to the seminar because you have osteoarthritis of the knee, and you go home and suddenly your marriage is substantially better and your finances improve and your garden starts blooming yellow roses when it used to blossom red roses. And
that's
citing
actually a real thing.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
a real
that's
thing that happens to someone.
Yeah, not BS. And so change tends to occur in all aspects or all compartments of our reality, because in truth, the compartments are artificial. They're artificial constructs. And the way you do one thing, I'll reference someone who used to teach ME. The way you do one thing is the way you do all things, and that really is the epitome of what this field brings forth, is that you can't compartmentalize the changes that become available. And that also means that if you come to the seminar, well, your whole family benefits. Of course, it's more fun to bring your whole family to the seminar, but it's not isolated or encapsulated simply to your individual consciousness, because your individual consciousness is connected to the all. I like to say that if you come to a seminar, even if it's self-serving, you're serving humanity, because when you shift up the way that you're relating to your universal hologram, you emit different torsion fields of information into the fabric of the ethers that become available for others to resonate with too. So it's the physics of Gandhi: be the change you want to see in the world. When you shift up the way you're showing up in relation to reality, reality shifts the way it shows up in relation to absolutely everything. Because it's the physics of the all and the small and the small and the all. You can't change your own access points without affecting the collective. And so it's a beautiful opportunity to address the freaking chaos that appears to be happening at the collective level, where traditional paradigms seem to be kind of unraveling and everything's sort of up for grabs right now. Well, that can feel scary when you're looking at it at the surface. But when you begin to look at it from a morphic field standpoint, what we teach you in matrix energetics, you begin to look at everything as interconnected patterns of information. You begin to see the beauty and the synergy of the way things are reconfiguring personally and collectively, and then it becomes not a fear-based experience, but a tremendous opportunity to show up differently, and you're empowered with tools to support you every step of the way, even if you don't know which way you're going. And it's kind of cool not to know where you're going, believe it or not. It's kind of cool to be surprised and delighted by what path might unfold, because the path hasn't really been carved yet. And you can learn that in ME too.
And it's not all about being comfortable either. It's not about being safe or about being comfortable or about disease versus not disease, healer versus, you know, these conditions. Those are all conditional responses to something that can be completely fluid. And the more you let go of how you think things should show up, the greater your experience in the moment can be. I mean, the simplest of things, I remember William and I, our friend, we still talk about, we just saw this, we were at a seminar and we saw this one duck floating on the water. And Melissa came by and wasn't quite in the duck moment, but she knew we were. And we were just looking at this one duck, and it was a stupid duck floating on the water, but we can't forget that duck. We still talk about it 5 years later. It's like the simplest things have such majesty and power within them. And to be able to start to feel that and to see that is truly a joy that is beyond any understanding. It's a greatest gift. And it's one of the things that I think Matrix Energetics excels at bringing to people. And that brings me great joy.
And I would say to me as well, whether I was in the duck moment or not. And really, the fact that we're offering this seminar tour is, well, we're going to enjoy ourselves, because we often laugh. We say, well, we would have fun teaching, whether there was, you know, one person here or 1,000 people. It's a gift, it's an opportunity, and when opportunities come along, you want to step into them, you want to seize them, you want to embrace them. And so while we would like as many people as possible to come to these seminars, it's not to boost our ego or to even to make a lot of money. It's really about seizing the opportunity that is unique to the experience of a live seminar, that is unique to what will unfold based on the unique individuals that show up and help us co-create that field together, because it's a co-creation process. And the live seminar experience will not be available on webinar format. That's the difference. This is live. Like, it's like when musicians put on a concert. Well, you know, sometimes they put the concert out as a recording, but in most cases, you go to the live concert or you don't, and then you know, maybe you get an album, and hence there are the books. But I would say, if you're curious, if you're interested, if it can work for you. And even if it can't work for you, you might just set your intention to say, I want to be there, and then watch how the universe realigns and reconfigures circumstances to make it possible for you to be there. I'm often reminded of stories of people saying, well, I had no money, and I had no access to plane fare, and I had no way of getting off work, but I decided, I saw myself there, and I just knew I had to go. So I connected to point B. It's like calibrating your GPS in your car. You're like, I have no idea how I'm going to get from my house to this destination, but I'm going to program in the coordinates in my GPS of my car, and then the universe, like a GPS, will recalibrate the direction that your vehicle of consciousness will take. So suddenly you're able to get from point A to point B, and you have the resources, and you have the time off work, and you have a reservation on an airline. And that's really how the nature of reality functions. It's set your intention, see yourself there, and then watch as you let go how the universe will realign accordingly to allow those circumstances to line up with your desired destination.
It's so funny she uses that example, and she knows why I'm laughing, because we actually were at a Grateful Dead concert, and they did 4 encores, and we had to leave because we had to teach the next day, and it was like midnight already, and they were going to keep going because they really enjoyed themselves. And that's a point of like what the seminar is like. It's not just those guys that are on stage, it's everybody creates that experience together, which what makes it so incredible. And so we had to leave. So we get in the car, we're driving back to the hotel, and all of a sudden the GPS starts giving Melissa these funny directions, and she suddenly realizes the GPS is taking her back to the concert. because, well, part of me hadn't quite left. And she looked at me and she goes, "Stop it." And the GPS goes, "Recalibrating," and took us to the hotel. And so all the universe is playful like that. It really will participate in ways you frankly can't even imagine. I still can't even imagine. I mean, the things that are possible, I ask myself that every day, and I don't even have any kind of an answer about that.
And it's cool not to have an answer, because when you don't know anything definitively, that puts you in that space of grace that is possibility. And we've mapped the seminars to being in that space of not knowing so that we can access everything. And coming to a live seminar is coming to a non-pre-scripted experience. And what that means, I'm addressing one of the questions, is that one does not get up on stage to get dropped. Is that only for pre-selected people? And the answer is no, we never pre-select anyone, and we never really bring anyone up on stage to get dropped. We bring people up on stage to demonstrate for the group dynamic the mapping of the various modalities. Nothing is ever pre-selected. I'll share this briefly with everyone. I went to my first matrix energetics experience in 2006. I've been teaching seminars. After attending several hundred seminars, I began interning with matrix energetics and then teaching in 2008. But when I went to my first seminar, I was watching these people get picked in the audience by Richard. And I'm super skeptical and very, very logical, and it's just inverted curiosity. So I'm watching these people get brought up on stage, and I'm sitting there kind of indignant, going, "Oh, these are all plants. These are all people that were pre-selected to go up on stage to have this big experience so that they would dupe me into thinking I wanted to come to a seminar and they could take my money." This is what was going on in my head, because what I was seeing was surreal. It didn't match my subset of reality. And it was, to me, it was crazy stuff. At the same time, it was so familiar. There was a part of me that's like, it's like I knew what was happening, and I also knew how to explain it without knowing how I knew. So this was my experience for about 30 minutes until I got called up to be an example. And then all of a sudden, all of my theories had to go out the window because nobody had pre-selected me. I didn't get an email saying, "We need you to behave in a certain way and we'll send you a check later," right? All of a sudden, I realized this was real and this was legitimate. And we have a very kind of a rigid rule that we don't pre-select people, because that's going to create kind of a canned, planned outcome. We trust in the moment where our attention takes us, and we follow the flow of information. One of the best ways to get on stage, to be honest, at a matrix energetic seminar is to not give a crap whether you get on stage, to not care, to let go of the need to have an experience on stage, because you can sit in the back row and all of your patterns can change. And you can sit in the back row and never have a direct interaction with either one of us and be healed from your diseases. We have thousands of examples of people who never interact with us, and yet everything changes. So,
one of my favorite stories, that Melissa and I were in Asheville, and we were doing I think we were doing a free Friday night. In fact, it was a free Friday night. It was a 2-hour presentation, and this woman who had been to a seminar before brought her dad, and her dad was sitting in the back row, and he had COPD and he had an oxygen tank, aqua lung, to use a Jethro Tull expression, and he hated me. He hated me. He could not wait to get out of there. He just could not believe his daughter would bring him to something like this. Well, she came to see us next year, and she wasn't coming to the seminar. She just wanted to tell us that her dad never needed the oxygen tank ever again after that night. So he didn't get on stage. He didn't want to be anywhere near us, and yet this amazing thing just reached out and decided to play with him.
Yeah, so you could almost think of the field of matrix energetics as like a breath of fresh air, and it will reconfigure you from the inside out. And there are a few opportunities to, seize the gift that's going to be available live, whether you choose to join us in Italy or Germany or Seattle, Washington. We very much look forward to you being a whole part of this co-creative experience. And if you stay tuned, Kay will give you specific details about how to register. If you're having difficulty registering, who to email, and how to get direct access to the information. And this is the most important matrix energetics instructor of them all. This is Dexter. He just sits there and looks absolutely adorable on stage in Seattle. If you think that if you think the universe is not a loving universe, then just look at Dexter, because he is the most fat, beautiful, amazing bulldog, and he will be at the seminar in Seattle, and he does free healing sessions. So you might just want to come to Seattle to meet Dexter.
Some people literally say, "Is Dexter going to be there?" To
They don't
decide
even care if they're going. Yeah, they don't care.
I want to say one more funny thing about this. We have practitioners that have been with us a long time in Germany, and they have a little Pookie bear, whatever it is. It's a little kind of a Pooh Bear sort of stuffed animal. And that stuffed animal has been to so many seminars. We've set that stuffed animal on stage with people, and they've gone into deep states interacting with that so-called inanimate object and had transformation. So let go of your ideas of how things have to show up and how things behave and what reality consists of. It's all up for grabs in a good way.
In a good way. And for those of you that need the science of understanding how a teddy bear could actually heal someone, we'll give you that too, just so that your conscious mind has something to chew on. So let go, show up. We look forward to seeing you either in Italy, Germany, or Seattle, Washington. And we do promise you this experience will transform your life in ways that will keep on giving, and that seminar experience will never end, even when the hours of the seminar come to a close. So we thank you very, very much for joining us for this live webinar. If you're tuning in to the recording, then it's as though it was live, and for all of you that are here live, you will get the recording within 24 hours, and you'll have the opportunity to watch us over and over again. Do so at your own discretion. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you super soon.
I wanted to mention one more thing. Because this field is an interactive field, just being here participating with us in this live seminar, some crazy miracle could happen for you because, well, it's happened before and it will happen again. Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And as it's been said, you can join Richard and Melissa for the best of Matrix Energetics seminars in Italy. That's Riccione, Italy, November 14th through the 17th. In Kirchzarten, Germany, November 21st through the 24th. And wrapping it up in Seattle, Washington, December 7th through the 9th. You can find more details and registration information at www.i-hrt.com. That's i-hrt.com. If you have any questions remaining, you can email info@i-hrt.com, and you can use that same email address if you run into any problems with registration. That will come to me, and I'll be more than happy to help you. It's info@i-hrt.com. Thanks again for joining us today. We really hope to see you in Italy, Germany, and Seattle for the best of Matrix Energetics. Create a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the world. Bye now.